Hey everyone, my name is Nick McCarthy and I'm the Director of Programming at NewFest. And thank you for sticking around for this conversation with the filmmakers following the shorts program Till We Can Meet Again. I know we're very excited to present this shorts program because it not only underscores the importance of community and gathering, but also reflects what I know we're all missing right now, having been impacted by COVID. And the pandemic, of course, has left us in a way that the physical gathering spaces that we held so near and dear and sacred are taking pause. So I'm excited to be able to celebrate these stories from these beautiful filmmakers too, because we need to at least be able to vicariously or find new ways to reinvent the way that we connect right now. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce four of the filmmakers of the short scene today. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our films.
First off, we have the director of, the director of Breakwater, Chris Lira.
Hey everyone, hello.
And then next to Chris, we have the director of Pussy Palace, Laura Kerwin Ashman.
Hi.
And then just beneath her, we have Heather Marie Ach, the director of Flourish.
Hi everyone.
Looping out, we have the director of Dancing on My Own, Alexandra Cuerda.
Hey everyone.
Oh, I love seeing all your smiling faces, and we're sharing space here in these boxes at least too, and it's beautiful to see all of you. I'd love to touch upon this idea of queer physical spaces. I think there's an underpinning in all of your films. 3 of your films are short documentaries, and 1 is a narrative. But I think that this concept of the importance of gathering to learn about oneself, to connect with others is so essential. So I'd love to hear sort of one by one why you decided to spotlight the location that you did, whether it be a beach in Brazil, whether it be Pussy Palace, whether it be Bubble Tea, or a creation of your own drag show. So if we could start with Chris, and then we'll go to Laura, Heather, and then Alexandra.
Cool. Yeah, that's a important theme for Breakwater, because we at first we thought that maybe we would shoot in São Paulo, in the city. That was the project first, and by chance we went up going to this beach, and for New Year's we had just met, me and the girls, and they invited us to come along. So I took my camera, just for being safe. Maybe something happens, I don't know. And so we spent New Year's there, and then we went back to the city, and we were like talking and thinking how we go along. And after quite a few months, I decided to look at those images that we shot in the New Year's, and I realized that was the way to go. So I realized that was a possibility to like create a territory, like a queer lesbian territory, in which we'd actually like be safe and free to love, perform, and walk around naked. And so in the end, the film is a lot about creating this physical and emotional territory for our bodies, our affections, and to be like together in and taking care of each other, and identifying ourselves in one another. So that's a lot. The film is a lot about that, about territory, and also building this territory in films, like creating our films, also like making this territory for lesbian films possible. So that's about it. I don't know.
Yeah, and as a director creating that safe space, no, Cool. Laura, can you tell us a bit about how you first came upon Pussy Palace and when you were like, this needs to be documented and have its legacy, you know, reach further audiences too?
Yeah, for sure. So Pussy Palace is, for those who don't know, it's a monthly club night in London, UK. And it's designed to create as safe a space as possible for queer people of color. So Pussy Palace was basically a night that I sort of came across, I guess around 4 years ago now. And it was back when I was running like a female film collective. It was very like DIY, with just two friends. And we were basically just trying to throw ourselves into like the kind of very DIY collective scene that was growing at the time in London. And that scene just naturally sort of attracted a lot of people who felt underrepresented by all kinds of mainstream media and were forming collectives and putting nights on and doing events. And so that inevitably sort of just involved a lot of people of color, queer people. And yeah, I just heard about this night that was literally aimed at those people. And I started going, and I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never been anywhere like that. I'd never been in a crowd that was like people like me solely, and in a space that was like designed to center us and help us feel safe. And yeah, just through going all the time and being part of this kind of blossoming scene in London, you just inevitably see the same people, see the same faces, you start talking, become friends. So I got quite close to the sort of collective of Pussy Palace who run the night, but also do lots of other things on the side, like workshops and putting on events at festivals. So yeah, it just became very personally important to like my sort of journey of identity and sort of self-discovery that I was going through at that time. And then, so basically I'm a writer-director. I work in narrative fiction. I don't consider myself a documentary maker. It just so happened that like the first film I made was like out of my own money. I made it with like £200 and some friends. And I was like, I don't have the money to make fiction. So I'm just gonna, do something really short. It was like 5 minutes long. And then the opportunity came along from Converse, who wanted to fund like 25 young women across London to basically do a project of their choosing. And it was only a small amount of funding. It was £1,700. So again, not enough to make a narrative short. And yeah, it just seemed like the obvious choice if I was going to make something that was like going to step my directing skills up and show what I can do with like an actual camera, not an iPhone, which was the last one was made on. That Pussy Palace was the perfect thing to kind of to showcase and highlight, and also it fits the themes of my narrative work, which is all about queerness and blackness and female experience, and centering it around love and joy, because I'm sick of our narratives always being framed within like trauma and suffering and how shit it is to be queer and black. And for me, Pussy Palace like represents that love and joy and community. Sorry, that was very long.
No, that was it wasn't long. It was perfect. It was a perfect encapsulation of the celebration of this documentary short too. So, and Heather, can you speak to sort of creating this drag club and sort of what setting meant to the themes of this short film?
Yeah, absolutely. And Laura, that was the perfect segue, because for me with my company, with FemPower Productions, the goal is very similar, right? The goal is to focus on joy. The goal is to focus on resilience and to get away from those trauma narratives. We need all the narratives, but the joy, resilience, chosen family, those are the narratives that I'm personally interested in. So I'm so excited to see your work, all of you. And so with that in mind, where can you find more joy than at a drag show? So I also have been involved in drag community in New York City. I'm a drag performer myself. high femme drag, not drag king, to be clear. And I love Queens, and I love being in queer space. I'm a very social person. And again, to me, one of the many joys of being queer is gathering with my community and my crew and partying. I mean, come on, I mean, I live for many things, but that is one of the things, So, and I think it's so important, especially right now. I'm so thankful that this is documented, because with, so many clubs closing always, even prior to COVID, but I'm thinking specifically of, my heart goes out to all the folks at the Stud in San Francisco. Their story is so amazing in terms of actually, queer people coming together to create a collective, to run their own club. And I have so many good memories of that space. And so it's interesting, because one of the things that I've been thinking about, because I'm taking my short films and moving towards episodic, and I'm working on a series right now, so fingers crossed. And it's interesting that part of that narrative would center around space, and that in New York City, in order to have a sustainable space, it has to be, or up until, it has had to be fictionalized. And so I'm interested in what that means. So there's tons of spaces there, there's tons of parties, or like things will last a certain amount of time. It's fleeting sometimes, right? For queer folks. And yeah, so that was, I wanted to make something fun. I wanted to make something with fabulous costumes. I wanted to make something that represented the intersectional queer communities that I'm a part of, and, throw a little poly narrative in there. And, what does it, hopefully all of us have had those magical nights out and about, where we get our looks together, and that moment where you end up on the dance floor, you meet a new crush, and you realize, wow, this is why I'm alive. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So that's what I wanted to capture.
Exactly where we're supposed to be. I love that. Alexandra, I know that, we're talking about narrative and documentary here, and Dancing on My Own is a bit of a hybrid too, but very much at the core, it's about sort of your discovery of bubble tea. Can you speak a bit about sort of from the moment you first went to when, once again, you're like, this needs to be on film, this needs to be shared?
I mean, Nick, it's my life story. That's the crazy part. I mean, the film opens with a fictionalized account of my own coming out story, which was the worst. It was truly the worst. I was learning to drive, 15 and a half. My mom was teaching me to drive. And in the middle of us arguing about, I don't know, the church, because my family's super religious, I came out to her, and she didn't talk to me for a month. And then that month turned into, a decade. And that, was really, unfortunately, the painful beginning of my own story. And I think, honestly, a lot of the chosen family that I found in New York, we all kind of came from these really difficult backgrounds and these difficult, very fractured relationships with our families. I mean, some people were, lucky and blessed enough to have families that accepted them with open arms from day one, but my parents weren't from here. They were raised in a country that is still to this day like 95% Catholic. The Philippines is the only place in the world that does not allow divorce outside of the Vatican. And so you're talking about like, these are people who came from another place that is also home. And there are values that are deeply embedded there. And then at the same time, they were also people that were protesting a dictatorship. They were the ones that were ousting, President Marcos. So it's so funny that all of these like complicated things can exist in one person, that you can love your parents, but you can also be hurt by them. And I think like that was sort of what I found was kind of the bedrock of the story, because I wanted to do a documentary on bubble tea because, kind of like Laura, I came as a fan. I came into it as like, oh my gosh, like this is heaven. This is it. Like, and kind of like what Heather was saying, it's like those nights in New York, I mean, there's nothing like it. It's what made me fall in love with the city. And so, you know, to kind of come in as a fan and then eventually to become part of the collective and then realize that, you know, these spaces are sacred. And yes, they are fleeting, but like they help us remember who we are, you know, and they help us define who we can be. And like that was the transformation for me. And so, you know, again, similar to Laura, I did this through a grant program with a company called Visco. They financed the whole thing. But throughout the development process, they were like, okay, you say bubble tea is important. You say this community is important, but why is it important? Why is it important to you? And so my advisors were the ones who challenged me to put myself and my story on camera, because I am not an actor. I am definitely behind the scenes, you know, hiding from the spotlight. I am not a performer, but it was one of those things where I was like, oh, wow, the reason why these spaces are so important are because they literally saved my life. Like they saved my life and they saved my relationship with my mom, you know, like later in the film, you know, not to spoil it. Hopefully you've seen it all already, but you know, my mom apologizes to me on camera. And it's like, do we ever get that moment? You know, do we ever get that moment where we get to heal the fractured relationship, right? Like there's so much trauma. There's so many stories of, you know, honestly, people in our community being killed for just walking down the street. And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I've seen that narrative. I've seen that narrative happen to people that I know. And it's heartbreaking, but that's not the only narrative. You know, that's not the only end, I think, to our story. And we can have a positive and uplifting and happy ending. And it does exist. So long story short, that's what Dancing on My Own is about. You know, it was really about me trying to figure out my own life and figure out, you know, who I am in this film.
No, yeah, it's you know, very clear, like artist catharsis too, but also once again a presentation of something very clear. And I believe you know, everyone's talking about celebration, and that's what we were so excited about within all of these films, is that they do represent a kind of celebration, for sure, as it relates to physical spaces too. And I believe in one of the shorts, I think it may be Dancing on My Own or it may be Pussy Palaces, like I didn't have the words, and it's sort of like recognizing, you know, what these words were after being immersed within this community and sort of seeing myself while seeing others at the same time. I'd love to know, sort of, we're also talking about the survival of these spaces. We're talking about how essential these spaces are. You know, reinvention is something that the queer community is, you know, so accustomed to as well. I'm curious to hear from each of your perspectives, you know, whether relating to the space that you documented in your film or depicted, but what your hope is for, you know, post-COVID gathering spaces and reinvention to stay connected. This is kind of open if everyone, I mean, we went through a nice line before, but if we want to, I know, Chris, yours is the most abstract tangentially related to this, but it's still very, you know, tied to
it. Do I start?
Yeah, do you like that? Yeah, if you do.
Well,
I don't know if you're following the. Well, if someone has an answer, you can go first, because I don't.
I mean, I don't really have an answer per se, but I mean, if you take the case of Pussy Palace, for example, like they've just stopped. They had to stop because they don't own a venue. They put the night on at different venues, and they've probably changed venues like anywhere between like 5 and 10 times since I've been going, because they're constantly, when you're putting on a space, a night like Pussy Palace that is designed like first and foremost with like the safety of the people that it's for in mind, it's really difficult because you have to work with like the staff that are there, the security that are there. Like as you see a little bit of in the film, they have, you know, before every night they have a meeting with like all the security or the staff to be like, this is the deal, let us deal with things first. If we need you, we'll ask for help. So there's so much that goes into putting on a night that is designed to be, as safe a space as possible for queer people and queer people of color. So finding the right venue and the right staff is like really tricky. They've moved around a lot, and obviously with like lockdown, they've just stopped. Like it can't take place. And they got to a point where they were doing really well, and for most of them it was their main source of income. So that's now gone, and a lot of them also like DJs, so that's gone because there's no nightlife anymore. It's a really scary time, and like our government doesn't give a shit about creatives. They're basically telling us we need to retrain because like our jobs are not coming back anytime soon, and they don't give a shit about the arts. So yeah, it's really worrying because so much of sort of queer community has sort of been relegated to nightlife and club spaces and venues because they're outside of homes, and homes are not always the safest space for our people. So yeah, it's really worrying, and I've definitely felt the kind of loss of community because like I'm not a massively sociable person. I go like Pussy Palace is like my one night a month where I go, and I always go alone because I know everyone there. Like I know all my friends are going to be there, people that I know, people in the community. So I just turn up whenever, and there's always going to be loads of people that I know, and I sort of get all my socializing done in like one big go, and then I like revert to like hermit mode. So I've really missed that because now I just don't see any of those people that I saw every month, and they're not all like my best friends, and they're not all super close, but just seeing those people and hugs and dancing and just that feeling of togetherness is really hard. And I think a lot of people in the community are feeling that loss.
Well, one of the things that I have found really moving during this pandemic, in addition, of course, to the massive social movements for racial justice, that's number one. But in terms of art and art making, I have just been, like you said, Nick, so impressed with how innovative and creative that artists have been across the country, across the world, that there's been so many online events, whether, again, that's drag or that's storytelling. And then as things are starting to shift a little bit, I'm seeing some outdoor events. I know, Bushwig just still happened here in New York City, and it was held outdoor and distanced with masks and all of those things. The videos are online. They're amazing. I actually did a very small, it was a, sort of a pilot program, outdoor screening event when I was in Los Angeles, because I'm used to doing community screening events. I've been going to all these festivals and seeing these amazing films like all of you made. I would love to screen your films sometime. I have the curatorial aspect of what I do is called FemPower TV, which I started in quarantine, curating lineups of short films. And so we did a test run of the FemPower TV lineup at an outdoor screening where there was, a max of 10 people there. But I'm telling you, just being with those 10 people, again, distanced with masks on, it was so nourishing. It was so beautiful and fun. And to see my friend, Carrie Cronenwald is a filmmaker as well. Queer trans filmmaker, put together this big screen, like super DIY, like attached it to the fence somehow. And it was just, again, I was like, I come from punk rock and DIY, and I was like, this is DIY. Like, this is what we do. They can't stop us. Like, you can't stop us. We will connect. We will build community. We will love each other no matter what, period. They haven't been able to stop us before, and they will not be able to stop us no matter what.
I mean, yes. That is all I have to say is yes. Like, I need that energy because, like, I feel both sides, Like, I feel what Laura is saying because it sucks, Bubble tea is the same situation. It's like none of us own anything, We are young and poor and queer, and here's what we've got, We're like putting it out there into the world. And it was the same thing. It was, probably once a month, maybe even longer than that. And we did one thing online during Asian Pacific Heritage Month in May, and that was so amazing. I mean, we had a full weekend of programming. We did shows, we did cooking shows, like everybody contributed something from the community. And that was in the middle of, sort of the heightened fear of those early months in New York. And that, I think, for me was so helpful to even be able to create an online space for your community. And yeah, same, what Heather was saying is also true. Like it's like, we can't stop, because for a lot of us, this is it. This is the family, this is the family that that we chose, and many of us don't have another one. So this is all we've got, and so we have to kind of keep pushing forward in any way we can.
And on that note, really quick, I know we're going to close out soon. If you are watching and you do have financial resources, there are many ways to support artists, to support DJs, whether that is through direct action, mutual aid. People have their Venmos up. Again, go find these queens, go find these DJs, go find these party organizers on social media, online, and, give them some coin, throw them some tips. And then there's arts organizations as well. But again, for people who are in nightlife, very, very much affected. Go-go dancers, strippers, everybody out there. So, share that information with each other and, support our communities, because we actually have enough to go around, right? We actually have enough to go around. So let's share.
Absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. I do know we have to wrap, but I would love for everyone to mention sort of if there is a place where you can go to support these communities, whether it is Bubble Tea has a fundraiser, or if Pussy Palace has a website where you can go and donate to sort of the survival of that party beyond it. I'd love, and also, Chris, I know that that Breakwater focuses on activists in Brazil. If there's a space where people can donate to sort of activists getting broken out of, for bail or anything like that too. I'd love to hear from all of you that you can share right now. We have this platform for everyone who enjoyed your short films to be able to go beyond. So I'd love for you to be able to share.
I can only speak, sort of like not even on Bubble Tea's behalf, but like knowing them and with them. I would say honestly, the best way is to connect through Instagram. That's really like where we post all the fundraisers. We also do things with other Asian American communities. We've been doing a lot of stuff to try and help Chinatown, in New York, because it is on life support, like along with a lot of, so we're trying to like figure out ways to partner as well. So definitely on Instagram, just follow Bubble Tea. It's Bubble 4 underscores and then T. And then if you're interested in, any of my work as well, I also do a lot of photography for parties, and also I'm a writer director interested in documenting our queer spaces. I'm at Alexandra Cuerdo. And yeah, I mean, I agree with basically everything that's been said on this. Just please support us, because that's how we stay alive.
Yeah, and then in terms of Pussy Palace, they don't have a specific fund just for them, but if you follow them on Instagram, it's at Pussy Palace, Pussy with an X instead of a U. They're really good in terms of sharing information about individuals or other funds that are affecting our community. There was one that was organized towards the beginning, which was the UK QTIBIPOC Hardship Fund. That's temporarily closed whilst they sort of dole out. They raised almost 100 grand, and they're doling that out at the moment to people in need, but it may well open back up again. But yeah, if you follow Pussy Palace, then they're like the hookup. They're really good at sharing just like everything that's going on with our community, and I know they'd really appreciate new engagement. And yeah. And I'm at Laura K_A on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll just, I won't say any names here because it will be in Portuguese and I guess no one will be able to understand. But there are lots of funds, especially for helping trans people that live in difficult street situation in São Paulo and in other big cities in Brazil. And if you can find me in Instagram, it's Chris_Lida, just like it's written there. I'll send you the links for you to be able to find these places.
And is that also with Casanem in Indianara?
What?
Casanem too, Indianara?
I didn't get Indianara. Yeah.
Has a.
I don't know. I don't know if that there might be the same. There are quite a few different places. Indianara is like this incredible woman, and she's doing a lot for trans people in Brazil.
Excellent. You know, there's so many places. Again, I tend to follow, you know, collectives that are led by Black trans femmes, and then, you know, see where, you know, then that money goes out wherever it needs to go. So Glitz isn't party specific, but they're connected with Save for the Girls. And then if you connect to that, then you'll connect to the next, the next, the next. I don't know what Bushwig is doing exactly. You know, I love my Bushwig girls and always support them. I personally love Nikki Jizz as a San Francisco-based drag queen, and she has a show called Reparations Drag that's all an all-Black lineup of all different genders doing drag. And that's one that I love. And so again, I think once you start, so what I do personally is, you know, say for example, I'll go to one of the drag shows and then I'll tip each of the drag, I'll follow the performer on social media, tip each of them, and then say, you know, whatever donation I'm able to make that day, divvy that up between everyone, and then that money is going direct, right? So again, I think, you know, look at the different clubs and spaces that you go to. A lot of them have fundraising information if they need it, you know, follow the leadership of Black trans femmes, and, you know, peep who the, again, go-go dancers are, and sex workers, and, you know, folks who are really not going to be, you know, covered by the powers that be, right? So, you know, again, it's like we have to take care of each other, and I do believe that there's enough to go around. So thank you in advance, everyone, for taking the time to go and make some donations to keep nightlife and those in our communities who are most vulnerable alive and thriving, right? Not just surviving, but thriving.
And thank you all for being here today and for sharing your stories. I know we have, you know, representation from Brazil to the UK to here in our hometown of New York. So it's really wonderful that we were able to have everyone involved, you know, in this conversation today. So I want to thank you again for sharing your stories with NewFest.
Thank you. Bye.
And thank you for sticking around for this virtual conversation with these 4 wonderful filmmakers who shared their stories. And please do be sure to check out all of the handles that they just mentioned and to follow these wonderful venues as well as artists. And please do everything you can to support these physical spaces while we are still facing a pandemic. You know, the survival of them are essential to our community. So please check those out. And also check out the rest of the films that we have to offer at NewFest. At newfest.org, you can check out over 120 films. Every film is a doorway to another world. So please go and check that out. And also, you know, text your friends, build community this way as well. I know that, you know, I'm inspired by hearing from Bubble Tea, Pussy Palace, everyone, the way that they're preserving community. So we hope you can join us around film too. Thank you so much. Till we can meet again.